All right, so you want to know about this first kiss, huh? Let's dive in.
Sounds good.
Seems like getting a lot of attention online. You're not the only one curious about this one. Our listener wants to know if it, lives up to the hype. And we've got a ton of reviews and analogies to dig into.
Yeah, for sure. It's definitely caught people's attention, that's for sure. Over on ega.com, it's got a pretty solid 4.1 stars.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah, ega.com, that's a Japanese movie review site. Lots of positive feedback, but, there are a few different opinions floating around out there, too, which is always interesting, right?
Definitely, yeah. Keeps things spicy. Variety is the spice of life and all that, especially with film criticism. But before we go too deep, how about we give our listener a quick plot summary?
Okay, good idea. So the film follows a woman. We'll call her Kan, just to keep things simple.
Kan, okay.
Yeah. So Kan is dealing with the sudden loss of her husband, and she figures out a way to travel back in time.
Time travel, huh? Always a fun concept.
Right, but not just to any random point in time. It's to the exact moment she first met her husband as a young man. 15 years before his death, actually.
Wow. Okay, that's a premise that'll grab you right from the start. I don't know about you, but I mean, the idea of revisiting that kind of pivotal moment, knowing how things, eventually turn out, that's both intriguing and heartbreaking. You know what I mean?
Totally. Raises a lot of questions, for sure. And it sounds like the film explores those questions, with some nuance. One thing that jumps out from the reviews is while the time travel element is there, it's not like a big, flashy sci-fi thing. It's more of a way to kickstart Kan's emotional journey.
Okay, so less about the mechanics of time travel, more about the human experience within that scenario.
Yeah, precisely. And to bring this story to life, the filmmakers have put together a pretty talented team. The screenplay is by Sakamoto Yuji.
Ah, Sakamoto.
Yeah, he's known for his really sharp dialogue and his realistic take on relationships.
Oh yeah, fans of Quartet or Soybean Field and Three Ex-Husbands will recognize his style right away.
Exactly.
Yeah, his work always has this way of making you think about your own relationships. I can already imagine the conversations he's written into this film.
Yeah, he's good at that.
So, who's directing?
That would be Tsukahara Ayuko. She's got quite a reputation for popular television dramas. Known for, creating visually engaging stories that really hit you in the feels. Seems like a good fit for this kind of material, right?
Yeah, definitely. And to top it off, you've got the amazing Matsuo Takako leading the cast. I have to admit, I'm already picturing her performance. I mean, the depth she must bring to a role like this. Wow. It seems like the talent involved is a major draw for a lot of these reviewers.
Oh, absolutely. Matsuda Takako and Matsuro Hokuto, he plays the younger version of her husband. They get tons of praise for their chemistry on screen. Yeah, reviewers are really impressed with Matsuda's ability to portray both, the grieving widow and the woman falling in love again, all while dealing with the whole time travel.
Oh, wow. It sounds like she's really hitting all those emotional beats. And Matsuo Hokuto playing a younger man falling for an older woman. That's got to be a challenge.
It seems like he's really risen to the occasion. Reviewers say he's convincing, and that he and Matsuda actually make you believe this connection, even with all the unusual circumstances.
Okay, so we've got a compelling premise, a skilled team behind the scenes, and strong performances. But let's get down to it. What are the critics actually saying about the film? Masterpiece or less?
Well, it's not a straightforward answer. Most reviewers seem to agree that it's well-made, engaging, but it's definitely not your typical time travel thriller. In fact, one critic even said the time travel element is like a single puzzle piece. Important, but not the whole picture,
So it's not a Back to the Future situation where the focus is on all the paradoxes and stuff.
Not exactly, no. It seems like the film uses time travel to explore, some deeper things like grief, second chances, the complicated nature of love and memory.
I'm listening.
Yeah, one reviewer even called it a meditation on loss disguised as a romance.
Okay, now that's interesting. It sounds like there's more here than meets the eye.
For sure. And this kind of leads to one of the more divisive parts of the film, the ending. It's not a typical happy ending, which has left some viewers feeling a little unsatisfied.
The ambiguous ending. Always a risk, but when it's done right, it can really stick with you. So what did the reviewers who liked the ending have to say?
They found it realistic and, thought-provoking. They said it stays true to the tone and themes of the film. One even said the lack of resolution is the resolution.
Okay, I'm intrigued now. Definitely intrigued. It sounds like First Kiss, Once T-Kiss is a film that really wants to make you think, not just, passively watch.
You got it. And one thing that keeps coming up as a highlight is the dialogue. Reviewers mention specific lines and exchanges that really capture those complex relationships and the, those raw emotions of grief.
Well, Sakamoto's a master of dialogue, so that's not a surprise. Any particular lines or exchanges that stood out to you?
Let me see. One reviewer mentioned a scene where Kane's talking about her marriage. She says, "We weren't perfect. We were messy. We fought. We got on each other's nerves. But even in those moments, even when I was frustrated, I loved him. I loved all of it."
Wow, that's powerful. A real testament to the lasting power of love, even with imperfections. I think a lot of people can relate to that.
Yeah, for sure. And it seems like the film explores this theme of imperfection further with some visual motifs. One that keeps popping up is the image of socks.
Socks. Okay, now that's interesting. I got to hear what they made of that.
Yeah, it's kind of unusual. There are a few interpretations. One reviewer suggested they represent the, that comfortable predictability of long-term relationships, while another one saw them as a symbol of how we try to fit into roles that might not really suit us.
That's fascinating. A simple object, but it sounds like it carries a lot of weight in this film. It speaks to the film's ability to layer in meaning and create a richer experience.
Exactly. And speaking of layering, let's move on to the visuals. A lot of reviewers highlighted the use of light and color. Seems like the cinematography is a key part of setting the mood and amplifying those emotional moments we were talking about.
The cinematography, huh? Yeah, I'm always curious how, the visuals contribute to a film. What do the reviewers have to say about the light and color in this one?
Well, several reviewers mentioned that the lighting has this almost dreamlike quality, especially in scenes with Khan's time travel or when she's remembering things. One even described it as like a soft, almost ethereal glow that envelops the past.
Yeah, that makes sense. A good way to show those bloodlines between the past and the present. Did they mention anything else about the visuals that stand out?
Yeah, actually, a lot of them talked about the close-ups. The close-up shots, they said it really helped them connect with the characters' emotional states.
Close-ups, yeah? They could be so powerful. Like you're right there with them, feeling what they're feeling.
Right. One reviewer mentioned a specific close-up on Kan's hand. It's trembling as she reaches out to touch her younger husband. The reviewer said it really captured, her inner conflict, like wanting to hold on but knowing she can't.
Oh, wow. That's a great example. So much emotion in just a simple gesture. But going back to the time travel for a sec, I'm wondering how they handle those transitions between the past and the present. Visually, I mean.
Yeah, that's interesting. It seems like the film doesn't really dwell on explaining how the time travel works. Several reviewers pointed that out. They said the hows and whys are kind of left vague.
Huh. That might bother some viewers who want, a clear explanation for the crimes fiction part of it. But I guess it also lets the film focus more on the emotional side.
Right, exactly. And it plays into that idea that, the time travel is just a starting point for Khan's journey, not the main attraction. One reviewer even pointed out that Khan's always feeling some intense emotion, like grief or regret, right before she travels back. It's almost like those emotions are fueling her jumps through time.
Oh, that's interesting. It has a psychological layer to it, It's like her desire to change the past is so strong, it's bending reality. But it also makes you wonder about free will and destiny, If she's driven by these emotions, is she really making her own choices?
Yeah, that's a great point. And it seems like the film doesn't give you an easy answer. Several reviewers mentioned that, the film is pretty ambiguous on that front. It's up to the viewer to decide if she's really in control or just being swept along by fate.
I like that kind of storytelling, Makes you think. Wrestle with those big questions.
For sure. And speaking of big questions, the film also looks at the theme of aging, the passage of time. It's not just about Khan going back to see her husband when he was younger. It's also about her confronting her own past, her younger self.
Right, and all the choices that brought her to this point.
Exactly. Several reviewers even said that Matsuo Takako's performance shows this passage of time in a subtle way. It's not just about makeup or hairstyles, but the way she carries herself, the look in her eyes.
Wow, that says a lot about her as an actor. She's not just playing a character; she's embodying the passage of time. Makes you wonder how she prepared for the role, how she tapped into that.
It's really impressive, and it's that attention to detail that that commitment to authenticity that seems to connect with viewers. It's not just a fantasy, it's grounded in those universal human experiences, love, loss, trying to make sense of it all.
Speaking of authenticity, I remember you saying earlier that the film's portrayal of marriage sparked some discussion.
Oh yeah, it does. The film doesn't try to sugarcoat things. It shows the less glamorous parts of being in a long-term relationship, like those moments of tension, frustration, that feeling of growing apart.
It's nice to see a film acknowledge that love isn't always easy, you know?
Right. One reviewer mentioned a scene where Khan is struggling to open a jar of jam, and it becomes this metaphor for all those little frustrations that build up in a relationship, those tiny details, those everyday moments. That's what makes the film feel so real.
That's great. I love that. It's not just the big romantic gestures, it's the little things that really test a relationship. But I also remember you mentioning that some viewers thought Khan was a little unsympathetic at times.
Yeah, a few reviewers said her behavior was, well, not the best. One even used the word obnoxious to describe her in a scene where she's complaining to some young girls who are waiting for shaved ice.
Well, hey, nobody's perfect, right? And it's interesting that the filmmakers didn't shy away from her flaws. Makes her feel more human.
Definitely. And it lets them explore her grief, and how it affects her actions. Don't forget, she's dealing with a huge loss. So her behavior, while not always, acceptable, it makes sense under the circumstances.
Right. It's a reminder that grief can look different for everyone. But speaking of grief, how does the film ultimately handle that? Does Ken find any kind of closure?
Well, that's where things get interesting. The ending, like we said earlier, it's open to interpretation. Some viewers thought it was hopeful, like Khan finds peace. Others felt like it left too much unresolved.
So it depends what kind of ending you're looking for, I guess. Do you want everything tied up neatly or something that stays with you, makes you think?
Right. But one thing several reviewers mentioned, and I found this really interesting, is the film's title. It's written as 1ST Kick with ST in all caps.
Okay. What's the significance of that?
One reviewer thought it might be a hint that this isn't Khan's first time traveling back, or her last. Like it's a cycle, a repeating pattern of trying to change the past.
Whoa, okay, now that adds a whole other layer to the ending. It's like the film is inviting us to imagine what we would do, if we had a chance to manipulate time. Our own what-if scenarios.
And that brings us back to that question of free will versus destiny, right? If she's stuck in this loop of changing the past, is she really in control?
Yeah. It's a fascinating question. And the film doesn't give you easy answers, but that's what makes it so good. It explores these complex ideas and lets you, the viewer, come to your own conclusions.
Exactly. And it's through those open questions and, thought-provoking ambiguities that the film really resonates. It keeps the conversation going even after it's over.
Yeah, I agree. Well, I think we've covered a lot here, from the plot to the performances, the symbolism, the big philosophical questions. But before we wrap up, I'd love to hear about some of the details, the little moments that really resonated with the reviewers, those little things that give you a glimpse into the heart of the film. I love those details, the ones that stick with you, those little moments that add something extra. So what about this film? What resonated with reviewers?
Well, one detail that people mentioned a lot was this image of a chipped teacup. Khan and her husband, they used to share it.
A chipped teacup. What's so special about that?
It's not about the teacup itself, really. It's more what it represents, like their shared history, their imperfections, the way they just accepted each other, flaws and all.
Oh, I see. So it's like real love isn't about finding the perfect person. It's about finding someone whose imperfections fit with yours.
Exactly. And the teacup, it appears in these key scenes almost like it's watching their relationship. One reviewer called it a reminder that even beautiful things can be broken, and that doesn't make them less valuable.
That's a really nice way to put it. Were there any lines from the film that stood out? Any dialogue?
Yeah, there's one that I remember. It's spoken by Khan's best friend, Yoshika Litofo plays her. She says, sometimes the hardest thing to let go of is the version of someone we create in our minds, that idealized image that doesn't always match reality.
That's deep. It's like we can hold on to these perfect images of people, even when they've changed. It makes you think about letting go of those images and accepting people for who they are.
Yeah, it's tough, but it's important, and the film seems to get that. Another thing that stood out to me was the setting, the botanical garden.
Botanical garden. Always a beautiful film. What's the significance here?
It's a place full of memories for Khan, a place where he and her husband used to spend time together. But after he's gone, it becomes this place where she can go to think, to find peace.
Yeah, I get that. Botanical gardens, they have a way of making you feel calm, connected to something bigger. Did the reviewers talk about how the garden looked in the film?
Oh yeah, one reviewer talked about the colors. They said the garden scenes had a wider range of colors than the rest of the film, and it felt like it symbolized, a change in Tan's emotions, like she was healing, moving on.
That's a nice touch. It shows how powerful visuals can be. They can tell a story without any words. Speaking of subtle things, what about the music? You mentioned the film's score earlier.
Right, the reviewers really liked it. They said it helped to bring out the emotions of the scenes. It seems like it combines, traditional Japanese instruments with some more modern sounds, creates a mood that's familiar but also a little haunting.
I love it when a score can do that. It just adds another dimension to the film. It sounds like First Kiss 1's T-Kiss does that well.
Yeah, it really does. All those elements, the dialogue, the visuals, the music, it all comes together to make something special.
Okay, so we've looked at this film from all sides. But the question remains, is it worth watching?
Well, I think it depends on what you're looking for. If you want an action-packed, time travel, adventure, maybe not. But if you're into character-driven stories that make you think, that explore, grief and love and the passage of time, then I think First Kiss is definitely worth a watch.
Yeah, it sounds like it's a film that will stay with you. And that's what we want, right? Something that makes you think, something that sparks conversation.
Absolutely. And this film does that, for sure. It makes you think about the choices we make, the things that happen in our lives, and the moments that define who we are.
And on that note, we'll wrap up our deep dive into First Kiss 1's T-Kiss. We hope this has given you some things to consider, maybe even piqued your interest in seeing the film for yourself. Until next time, happy viewing.